Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the VM Wealth family team as we stage our second Wealth Talks during these unprecedented times. Our first webinar last week was looking at retail clients and how COVID-19 was impacting the market and impacting their investment portfolios. This afternoon, we will be concentrating on our business community. My name is Tamra Wall Douglas, Manager for Sales at VM Wealth, and I will be your moderator for this afternoon. We have 4 distinguished presentations to be done today, and we will be taking questions after the end of the presentations. So sit tight and let's begin. It's going to be a good afternoon. It is my great honor to introduce our first presenter this afternoon. He is Dr. Damian King. He is the Executive Director of the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, Capri, and he's best known as the head of the Department of Economics at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, where he lectures in both graduate and undergraduate courses in macroeconomic theory and international trade. But I can tell you I'm very excited to hear the presentation by Dr. King. And Dr. King, over to you.
Time on a scale that we were not accustomed to. The demand shock, meaning that people have stopped spending to the same level that they were before, is because of social distancing. You can't have more than 10 people inside any business, and many businesses have had to shut down. People staying at home, they can't spend as much when they're at home, and the tourism business has disappeared. And then on the supply side, companies are less able to supply in the first place, and also less able to supply efficiently because workers are staying home, because they have to maintain distancing in the workplace, and some of their supplies are much harder to come by. So we are really in an unprecedented kind of contraction. There are 3 things I would like to do. I want to talk about the contraction itself and how deep it is going to be. I want to spend a little time talking about the path to recovery, and I want to spend most of my time on what can we expect. What is the environment businesses are going to be dealing with when we come out of this crisis, whenever we do so, what the new normal is going to look like. Before I do that though, it needs to be made absolutely clear that there are a lot of unknowns at this moment. All of our discussions about the impact have to be speculative. For one thing, we don't know what is the epidemiological path. We didn't know 3 weeks ago that we would have, 250 cases now, and we don't know in 3 weeks time how many we are going to have. Whether the curve is going to spike or it's going to be flattened. Secondly, we don't know what are the policy actions that the government is going to have to take depending on the epidemiological path. So how much further are the suppressive actions going to be? It's St. Catherine in lockdown now. Is it going to be Kingston at some point? And the extent of the suppressive actions will determine the depth of the economic contraction. At the same time, the government is trying to stimulate the economy to mitigate the contraction. So they have their program where they are trying to get cash into the hands of small businesses and households. It seems to be going very well, but we don't know how long they're going to be able to keep that up and if they're going to expand it or contract it. If we don't know those things, it's very difficult to be able to say what the economic impact ultimately is going to be. And then, because this has never happened before, we don't know what is call it the coefficient of the policy action. In other words, is it, to what extent are the given actions going to help? So we are really in a speculative kind of situation here. Having said that though, let us go on to speculate as best we can so that we are dealing with some information rather than none. The contraction. We did a survey where we asked a large number of people who pay attention to business developments and persons in some of these sectors to themselves estimate how much the contraction is or is going to be shortly in each of the major sectors of the economy. And predictably, we see a wide variation, with the largest contraction being in the hotel and restaurant sector, partially because of tourism and partially because they've had to close down to a large extent. And at the other extreme, we see utilities and finance and insurance services having the least contraction, and even then, it adds up to a substantial contraction. So if we take the average of all of this economic activity, a weighted average based on the size of each sector in the economy, then we are looking at a contraction from peak, let us call that January, to trough, where it is probably going to be by the end of this month, middle of next month, if that is the trough, of a quarter of the economy. It is really hard to get across what a massive contraction this is and how unprecedented it is. The Jamaican economy has never seen anything like this. Now, to give a broader picture, we need to see how that affects the size of the economy, not just at the lowest point, but year on year, because that is what we're really dealing with. The best we can estimate, that is to say, if this contraction is sufficiently short and sharp and the recovery is quick, is that if we spread 28% over the entire year and call 28% a contraction for just one quarter, then the annualized contraction of the economy is 7%. That too is massive and unprecedented. So that is sort of the ballpark we're dealing with. But there is some comfort in reading that when the IMF published their own estimate of the level to which the Jamaican economy is going to contract in 2020 compared to 2019, their estimate was roughly 6%, and they're using an entirely different methodology. So it looks like we're getting a sense now of the scale of the situation we're dealing with and how bad it is. But by way of comparison, by the way, that 6 to 7% that we are speculating is very close to the average expected for the entire Latin American and Caribbean region. So Jamaica is on par where that is concerned. But that same 6 to 7% is twice what the IMF anticipates is going to be the global average contraction. So Jamaica is not getting the best of it. Let's put it that way. Okay, so on the recovery, we will have relatively little to say. Two things. All of those unknowns that applied before apply even more with the recovery, because the further we go out is the less we can know about the path, whether it's going to be one wave or whether it's going to be two waves in epidemiological terms. So how long are we going to be in a depressed economy? Well, nothing less than 6 months. That is absolutely clear. Beyond that, we don't know whether it's going to be 18 months or 24 months. So businesses and individuals need to be preparing for a relatively long haul in this current situation. At the same time, we are going to see, long before the economy gets back to normal, we are going to see an emptying out of businesses that are not sufficiently capitalized and are in sectors that are traditionally not well capitalized. So we're going to see some unoccupied business spaces opening up. That's going to make life difficult for everybody else, but also it speaks to opportunities that are going to exist once the economy really starts to come out of this. Not all businesses can survive a 2-year contraction of revenue, or even 6 months for that matter. So that's going to change the structure of the economy, during the recovery. But where I want to focus my attention on is when we do come out of it, whether it's 6 months or 2 years time, what does that new normal look like? And we can already discern 4 major trends that we can bank on. The first one is that we're going to see a diminution of the role of markets in making economic decisions and a stronger role for the state. We are discovering that the actions of individuals and individual companies, Alorica comes to mind, cannot be left to themselves. It has consequences for the rest of the economy in and out of crises. So this is going to create a much greater sentiment for the state to take a greater role in the economy. We're going to see, therefore, we're going to enter an era of more business and economic regulation and less talk and less sentiment for economic liberalism. At the same time, we're going to see a further contraction. There was a sense before that there was a tendency to retreat from globalization. Well, that will be accelerated by this crisis. That we're going to see some global fragmentation as people value supply chains closer to home and relationships closer to home, and a shift towards more localization. So to summarize point number 1, we're going to see a general retreat from liberalism and globalization in the new normal. The second broad trend is a shift from efficient to resilient. Companies are not only going to try to be more robust in the face of shocks, but they're also going to prize that in their business partnerships and suppliers so that they don't get disrupted when the next crisis comes along, even if it's not a global pandemic. So this resilience is going to mean that businesses are now going to want to have higher liquidity cushions. Businesses are going to want to have fatter supply chains in the sense that, lean manufacturing and just-in-time delivery clearly now has a cost. We're going to say businesses want to have operational redundancy, making sure critical business functions are duplicated in different spaces. All of this makes for less efficient operation. It means for delivering the product at a higher cost. But that is what happens when we value more resilience. Also, businesses are not going to have to take their contingency plan seriously. All businesses have risk management and contingency planning, but many of them pay only sort of lip service to it. The third trend that is sure to emerge is that even after we have fully recovered from this crisis, we're going to see slower global growth going forward. Firstly, that's an implication of trends 1 and 2, that greater regulation and greater resilience is going to reduce the room of businesses to maneuver, and at the same time devote resources away from simply getting the most out the fastest. So we're going to see slower global growth going forward. Secondly, businesses are going to come out of this crisis with higher debt loads, with higher corporate debt loads that allowed them to survive the crisis. So as they work to reduce that corporate debt and at the same time build up capital and cash reserves, it means less of their attention is going to be focused on business expansion. The fourth and final major trend is the one we are already seeing, and it's going to have a significant legacy, which is the shift from physical presence to remote working and delivery. This operates both on the side of the workers, we are discovering that a lot of activities, a lot of employment don't work so well remotely, but some do. And secondly, businesses are now scrambling to be more efficient in delivering their services remotely. And some are going to figure that out, and that's going to stay. We're already seeing a boost to the gig economy. That's going to stay. Teleworking, e-health, distance learning, all of those industries that can in fact deliver effectively remotely, that is going to have a lasting effect. So even though we can't at this point know exactly what is the business environment that is going to exist after we are past all of this, I think we can have a lot of confidence at this point that whatever else is on the agenda, these 4 trends are almost certainly going to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. King, for that very insightful presentation that you did. It took lots of notes. We'll get back to you in the question and answer time. So just to jump right to it, we're going to introduce our second speaker for the afternoon. She is Miss Diane Ashton Smith. She's the head of corporate affairs at Red Stripe. She'll be speaking to us today on business continuity strategies. Red Stripe is a big member of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, who is one of our sponsors today, so we thank them for that. Just to give you a little background on Ms. Ashton Smith, she is also the director of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce and an assistant lecturer at the Mona School of Business. Her special interest includes social interventions, youth empowerment, and development in utilizing creative arts. So let's now hear from Ms. Ashton Smith.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate your kind words. You know, we're extremely honored to be part of Wealth Talk Pandemic Business Strategy today on behalf of Red Stripe, and as you mentioned, of course, as a member company of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. So it is I realized I was on mute for so long and I was there chatting away, but just wanted to say how grateful we are to be part of this session and as part of a membership of the JCC. I'm on the slide, 230 members. It's very extremely important for us as members of the JCC, and in fact the JCC itself, to be involved in sessions such as these, as it feeds directly into our mission to be a provider of effective business connectivity and world-class trade and commerce facilitation through lobbying, through advocacy and business support, so as to ensure our members' success. And these fora really allow us to keep our members and the wider Jamaica educated on what is happening within the business context. So just the Red Stripe Beer, which was of course first brewed in 1928. DNG was actually formed in 1918 when they had the Spanish flu epidemic. So it is of course encouraging for us because over 100 years later, we have still withstood all of those. As you can see, we are a very proud company. We have under our belt 13 MOND Selection Gold Medals to our credit, among numerous other awards. We brew in the United Kingdom, Jamaica as well, under license, and it's now available, Red Stripe, in over 25 markets around the world. Red Stripe, of course, is our flagship brand, and it forms part of an outstanding collection of beverages across alcohol categories, spirits and beer, and these include, of course, Guinness, Baileys, Johnnie Walker, and a host of them. Now, as a company that is part of a worldwide group, we have responded to the outbreak of COVID-19 by ensuring that our employees are kept informed regularly, while, of course, implementing preventative measures for travel, personal hygiene, workforce division, in line with guidance from the WHO, the government and Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the global guidelines as well from our parent company, Heineken. We're acting with three basic principles in mind. First, the health and safety of our employees, as well as the trust of our employees, is paramount at this time. Second, we do everything to safeguard the continuity of our business and appeal of our brands, and that includes committing to the continuity of suppliers and our customers. And thirdly, we offer contributions to those communities who are most impacted by the coronavirus. For us, we have developed a governance structure which is governed by our management team. We meet virtually at least twice a week to make sure we're keeping our employees informed, that we're making the right decisions, and we are indeed making progress. We have also created 3 task forces, as you can see, that come together on a daily or a weekly basis to ensure, 1, the health and safety of our employees, 2, our supply chain stability and business continuity. And as well, very important to us is our brand and corporate reputation, that a positive reputation is maintained. Now, in terms of the health and safety of our teams, I know this is a very detailed slide, but I just wanted to highlight for you those things that are above and beyond the requirements, such as the distribution of adequate personal protection equipment for all employees. And this includes, but it's not limited to, gloves, masks, and personal hand sanitizers, and access to our wells for filling of water bottles for our employees. The other thing is the increased amount of time between shifts to eliminate shifts coming into contact with each other. And we also provide private transportation for our production team members needing the service, with clear sanitization policy for our transport providers. The next thing for us is we recognize that more than ever, and for our business continuity, two-way communications with employees is critically important to boost staff morale. And we've instituted the following things that you can see on the screen there. We have a weekly electronic newsletter. We have Monday motivations with COVID-19 updates, tips on how to manage through these uncertain times. We have a bi-weekly Ask the MT session, which is hosted on Microsoft Teams, such as we are doing today, to allow team members to share ideas, ask questions, maintain engagement and connection, and provide pertinent business updates to them as well. We also have virtual town halls for those supply teams who are currently working on site. We have virtual coffee chats with our MTs, and this is a very relaxed, it replaces what we often have, or MT forum lunches, which are intended to be aspirational for those exceptional team members to get a chance to engage directly with the management team. We have a sip and share, again, also on Workplace by Facebook, and this allows teams to interact, ask questions, and COVID bulletins. These are very important because as they are needed and in tandem with those announcements from the government, we make sure that our teams are kept up to date. These, of course, go hand in hand with initiatives that we have developed to ensure the mental, the physical and emotional wellness, especially for the teams working from home, and the adjustments they've had to make. And these have been formalized and communicated and diarized, as you can see on that schedule that we've established work from home guidelines for our teams. Another thing that we have implemented for our teams to really ensure that they are operating in a way that makes them more focused on productivity levels and, of course, our business continuity is that we've included wellness sessions. These are wellness breaks that we afford for our teams, 15 minutes every day, stretches, motivational talks to provide mental health and wellness support. We also have a virtual gym class where employees can work out. We have this hosted on Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp, etc. And we have an employee support network, very important at this time, which provides our team members with the support that they need from external people, advice on emotional, mental, financial issues. And finally, of course, we can't be Red Stripe and not have a happy hour. And so we do virtual happy hours every other week to provide our team members with the opportunity to engage, feel a sense of community in a time when we are really socially distanced. So without a doubt, COVID-19 has impacted our operations. As you know, our beers and spirits are by definition social products enjoyed together. And in Jamaica, there is a pause to social gatherings, hospitality, and events because of COVID-19. And at this stage, it's not possible for us to assess the negative business impact or the extent of it, the duration of COVID-19. But as you heard from, the previous speaker, of course, it's going to be quite a huge impact on us going forward in excess of 6 months, as he has indicated. But we, however, continue to produce for both the domestic and the export markets. And we've taken additional measures to ensure production continues. Our export market is effectively serviced and our brand and corporate reputation, remains intact. So some of the initiatives include we have moved our sales and operations cycle to weekly versus monthly to keep a pulse on our business impact and the impact of our sales or forecasting to ensure that we have our supply intact and we can service the markets when they come back up. And as I said, exports remains quite functional and doing very well. We also work alongside our regional exports, other Heineken companies, just to check and see what are they doing that we can apply to our operations. For those employees whose job roles have reduced, we've replaced them with cross-training for employees with e-learning platforms. And on weekly management cycle, we have ensured that our inventory or, reducing our storage costs for raw materials and demurrage is, of course, something we track on an everyday basis. Constant communication with our suppliers is a must at this time, and we do this just in the event of a fast startup, and that is required. Now, as a responsible brewer, we remain as well committed to responsible consumption during this crisis, and we encourage our consumers to respect drinking guidelines and recommendations of public health authorities. And this we're doing through our balanced communications with increase in online socializing through a brand new campaign that we're calling #Socialize Responsibly. We've also developed a COVID-19 responsible communications code for the commercial, brand, and corporate teams. So we're acting in accordance with those measures. So even as we take precautionary measures for ourselves, we also consider the most vulnerable in our society. So elderly infirmary residents face considerable risks. And so as a business, we have donated 1,500 cases of Malta to the Ministry of Local Government. We've also been very clear too that with the additional move of in the fight against COVID-19, we have made available radio, print, and billboard advertising spaces for use by the Ministry of Health and Wellness in their public education campaign. We know misinformation is one of the hazards in a crisis such as we're now facing. And one of the best actions we can take is to support the spread of factual information so Jamaicans can have the best advice as quickly as possible. We've also recognized that some of our citizens are unable to access online classes and need support in providing nutrition for their children with schools being out. As such, through our DNG Foundation, we've issued, care packages with food items to 115 families and 17 teachers of early childhood institutions in surrounding communities, inner city communities. We've also provided education support, provision of printed study and classwork material, which will be used for students preparing to sit the primary exit profile exams, the PEP exams, that do not have internet access and are unable to access learning material on time. So we are doing a lot, and our hope is that the examples we've given will serve to inspire you if you're not doing these already. There is no doubt that these are unprecedented times. And as businesses, small, medium, and large, we have to adapt. And our suggestions to fellow businesses on how they can lessen the impact of COVID-19 are what we have dubbed the 3 C's methodology. It might sound pretty simple, but they are so key at this time. So constant communications, championing the change, and of course, continuity beyond COVID-19. So the thing is, we need to be fast, reactive, and proactive, as well as sensitive. The health and safety, as well as the trust of employees, as I mentioned earlier, is paramount at this time. And so constant communications will be key to keeping them engaged and motivated and trusting of you. So utilize the online tools available for virtual meetings, town halls, and group activities, social and otherwise. Secondly, we feel, we really shouldn't allow this crisis to go to waste, especially as leaders. It's a moment of truth for us to level up our leadership with strong, clear direction, a strong sense of empathy as well, and strong internal policies that safeguard the web of relations among employees, among producers and consumers, lenders and borrowers, so that business can resume in earnest when the medical emergency abates. Thirdly, ensuring your business continuity beyond COVID-19 must be top of mind at this time. Based on what we're seeing elsewhere, well, we know that for the actual pandemic, it takes 2 or 3 months to recover. But as it relates to the economic recovery, we are hearing 6 and more months. The truth is, we are still not sure how long that will take and what will change structurally with our businesses. But our advice is that, as we're doing, is to operate in crisis mode. Nothing will go as planned, but it is important to do everything to safeguard the continuity of our businesses through targeted measures, such as effective cash and cost management now. We are also looking at, moving to the new normal, and we've started to look at that. My apologies for how these slides are moving. But here is something that I thought would be very important to share with you, because it has to remain, even as we go to the new normal, that people and their health and safety should be top of mind. Resuming operations as well is going to require a step-by-step approach. It's not something that as the doors are opened, we'll have to open our doors as well. And so it's going to be extremely important for us to plan early so that we are prepared for changing scenarios. And as I said, avoid sending all employees back to work at the same time. Always be ready to adjust your plans and move back to more protective measures if needed. And in any case, we always need to respect government guidelines. The last thing I'd like to share with you is when to start executing your moving, to new normal plans. There are key public indicators. So the business has to come to a time when we have received permission to, at minimum, partially operate if some of us are unable to operate at this time. Schools have been partially or totally reopened. There's no foreseeable risk of a new outbreak. The rate of new cases is falling significantly. Movement restrictions have been eased or lifted. As for our case, it would mean outlets, as in bars, restaurants, entertainment, availability of rapid testing and contact tracing at scale, and medical facilities are not overburdened by the pace of new cases. We know this is a very important time. You know, it really is a war that we're in many ways it is. People are dying, medical professions are on the front line, and we've heard most recently a number of our own frontline professionals, medical professionals, are now falling prey to this horrible disease, COVID-19. And those in essential services, food distribution, delivery, public utilities, work overtime to support this effort. And then there are the hidden soldiers, those who fight the epidemic confined in their homes, unable to fully contribute to production, but are doing their part to keep our businesses afloat. And the past few weeks undoubtedly have been quite challenging for all of us. We're very proud to see the resilience of every single Jamaican. And in particular, you know, of course, I have to reference my Red Stripe people, the commitment they've shown during this time of crisis. And I'd really like to use this opportunity to thank them for continuing to work together as a team and to drive for the results of our business, especially when their own lives are being disrupted in so many ways. And we know the next few months will not be easy, but all the steps we're taking today are focused on protecting the health and safety of our people first and foremost, and the economic well-being of Jamaica. And this is not the first time we've faced challenges as a nation. As I mentioned, Red Stripe started way back in 1918 with the flu epidemic, and we have survived. Against all odds, we've survived some extremely difficult times. We're now confronted with what is by far the greatest challenge most of us have ever seen. We know it's an exceptionally difficult time for all of us as we work to juggle our own concerns around COVID-19. But the assurance we have is that the resolute and winning spirit of the Jamaican people have allowed us to survive other challenges, and we can and will come through this together. We want to thank VM and the JCC for the opportunity to be a part of the Wealth Talk series, and really do hope our presentation today provided some help in how your own businesses can cope through this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Ashton Smith. That was indeed a very detailed, intense presentation. You had me hooked. I've just written down your 3 C's: constant communication with the team, championing change, continuity beyond COVID. I think most companies, like you said, if they want to survive, these are the 3 C's that will make a difference. Thank you so much. So just to get into it, because we have 2 more speakers for the afternoon. So I'm going to just quickly introduce our 3rd speaker, and he's our very own Deputy CEO, and I have the privilege of calling him my boss. He is Mr. Kalanda Hutchinson, and he will be looking at corporate financial needs in this time of crisis. So just a little bio on Kalanda. He was appointed Deputy CEO of Victoria Mutual Wealth Management in January 2019. Prior to that, he was the head of capital markets after serving as the manager of asset management and advisory services. Kalanda has a wealth of knowledge, which I know he will share with our business community now. So over to you, Kalanda.
Thank you, Tamara, and welcome to all our participants. Good afternoon. I want to start out my presentation by reminding you a couple of points that Dr. Damian King raised earlier. It actually contextualized my conversation perfectly. He spoke earlier about the contraction that we expect in the economy. He spoke about the recovery and what the new normal will look like. He spoke about expecting not less than 6 months before we see any particular uptick, and it may be longer, and that businesses should prepare for the opportunities that may arise. One other thing he spoke about was that we may end up with some businesses that are not well capitalized having challenges, right? And on the macro level, he saw or expect that there'll be a role, the state will have a larger role to play as we go forward, and there'll be a move from efficiency to resilience, and we should expect slower growth, and that companies may end up with higher corporate debt. Now, I chose to contextualize it because my conversation is around 3 points really. What we are seeing in the market and the uncertainties because of COVID and the economic environment, we are seeing where persons and businesses are in a survival mode. So how do we operate in that survival mode, right? We're also seeing where we expect a recovery, and therefore we encourage businesses to have another eye on what that recovery would look like and how to position themselves accordingly. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about how it is that VMIL, VM Wealth can help with your corporate financing needs, because all the business decisions that you take will relate to utilization of resources. And perhaps in most cases, we expect that companies will need capital. So I'll close off on that, okay? So on the survival mode, again, my thought and shared by Dr. King earlier is that we should not plan for less than 6 months during this challenging time. The economic recovery will be longer, but certainly within 6 months, we'd love to have some light at the end of the tunnel, or some more certainty as to where we are going as a country, and in particular and globally as well. And so we'll recommend to our business partners and our clients that you prepare a cash flow, at least in the first instance, for the next 6 months, right? The cash flow, we encourage to be conservative. And what that means is that in terms of your inflow, you want to be conservative on that and project outflows on the more aggressive side. In that way, you cover all the worst case scenarios, okay? What the cash flow will help you to do is to identify any deficits down the line, and so that you can plan ahead for any shortfalls, right? You can talk to us to provide funding at appropriate time, but we'll give you an idea when it is that your cash flow, you'll find some challenges with your cash flow, right? Another recommendation when you're looking at your cash flow is to try and defer any outflow as far as possible in the future. Okay, that will help in terms of your net cash flow at the end of the day, so that you can continue your business. What I've found and what I've been seeing and the conversation I've been having is that businesses are now looking closer at their business model. They're looking at any particular leakages that would have been in the business in good times, because those are you want to plug those at this point in time, right? We would have seen, because of the contraction, businesses are deferring any particular capital expenditure, right? And so these are some of the recommendations that we have for you in the survival mode, okay? And I would want to just input at this point as well that in everything that we do, we need to consider the risks of our business, all right? Assess the likelihood of the risk coming to fruition and the impact it may have. Because again, you don't want, as Dr. King said, definitely there'll be some companies that will be challenged, some more than some, but what we are encouraging here is for you to take in consideration these factors so that you'll be in a better position to come out of this particular pandemic and these challenging times in a better way, all right? I want to pause here and just share something that came across my desk earlier that was shared by our president. And by the way, it was a document by the PSOJ that speaks to how, again, you would want to manage during these challenging times. And it spoke about 6 areas in which you could pivot your business. I'm not going to go into detail, I'm just sharing it, and perhaps we can share the document afterwards with the participants. And the first one is about operational pivot, right? Now we are seeing persons moving, working remotely, for example, right? And the second one is about platform pivot. We are seeing people going online to distribute their products more often, right? The other is customer pivot, right? For example, we're seeing wholesalers, rather than selling to retailers because of the fact that they are closed, they are trying to get closer or directly to the customers, right? The fourth is about collaborative pivot, where persons are forming strategic alliances, sharing operational capabilities, right? And the fifth is complete business pivot. And that is where you basically change your entire business plan. Okay, you may have started it recently, it hasn't caught up in terms of traction, and so you'd have decided based on what is happening, you would have looked at it and changed the entire business plan. And the sixth and final one deals with asset pivoting. And one example of that is that, you know, in what is happening and the scaling down and the contraction in demand, you'd want to look for assets or excess asset that you have to either rent or sell those, right? So it's a very interesting article, publication, and we encourage you to take a look at it. Okay, so that was the first point in terms of how you operate in a survival mode. Okay, for me, more importantly, or as important as surviving now, is to keep an eye on the recovery. What happens after this scenario? How can you position your business in the most advantageous way, right? And just a couple of points or a few points to share with you. You want to ensure that you look for the potential opportunities in your business environment, right? Perhaps you have opportunities to expand your market or to identify new revenue streams. Perhaps, again, you may look at mergers and acquisitions and strategic alliances I mentioned earlier in order to stay afloat or to make a stronger entity to weather the storm as we have and to emerge from this crisis in a stronger position. And you'd also perhaps want to look at your business model, right? How efficient are you? Rationalize some area. And we mentioned earlier, again, for non-core assets, you probably want to sell them or rent them. Okay, but certainly, while we are in an uncertain environment today, and both from the coronavirus in terms of the health side of it and the economic side of it, we expect at some point in time that we will recover. There will be a new normal, and we operate, but you'd want to keep an eye as we try to survive, put things in place to survive. Mrs. Diane Ashton Smith spoke about the business continuity during this time. But while we go through all of that, we encourage our clients and business persons to keep an eye on what happens at the recovery so that you will take some steps now to put yourself in a position to take advantage of those opportunities, right? So finally, in all those decision making, as I mentioned earlier, it would involve your allocation of resources, and might I add, Dr. King's scarce resources, right? And so the question is, how can VMIL, VM Wealth help in that regard on the capital side of the business, okay? So we have a very vibrant corporate finance team, right? That is broken down into two: a lending solutions unit that actually lends from our balance sheet, and a capital markets unit, right? So on the lending solutions side, we facilitate corporate loans for clients. So if it is that you want working capital support, then we are here to help. If you have receivables, and as I say, in a contraction, there will be some timing issue with collecting on your receivables. And if you have those challenges, we also do receivables financing, right? And we do a myriad of secured corporate loans. One of the things we pride ourselves on is that we believe that we can structure any transaction to satisfy our customers, right? So we'll sit with you, we'll look at your particular scenario, and we'll develop a solution for you, right? So that is where we lend from our balance sheet directly. And well, two other products I want to mention, and those are, one, insurance premium financing, and the second one is lease financing. On the insurance premium financing side of it, of course, you may have properties that were mortgaged, and the one requirement is usually the fact that you need to have insurance. So that is not something that will go away in this contraction, right? And therefore, again, with limited cash flow, lower cash flow, you may opt or would want to finance that insurance premium. So we provide that. You can come and talk to us. On the other side, lease financing. You may see an opportunity, even within a contraction, there will be opportunities for different firms, for different businesses, and therefore there might be some expansion opportunities for particular businesses. And we are saying that if you're trying to buy a piece of equipment or a set of motor vehicles, etc., our lease financing product would be appropriate. Again, come and talk to us. On the other side of the corporate finance business is where we capital markets, where we do a lot of transactions in the private placement market. Now we can, depending on what your financing needs are, we can do debt financing for you or equity financing. And that could be either in the private market or the public market. So again, come and talk to us, or look at our website, reach out to us. We are here to help. We have the means necessary. And before I go, I remember one of our COVID response is that, recall, we had established a fund for $1 billion for companies who wish to do an IPO, right? That is significant. Again, we believe there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. We need to plan for the recovery and how we operate in there. And so we have a number of solutions that will help you with the financing needs. So reach out to us. We'll try and reach out to some of you as well to help you with the financing needs. And Tamara, over back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Kalando. And why we do have a lot of products at VM Wealth Management to assist you at this time. And just to add, our contact number 960-5000. You can reach out to us, or you can reach us at wealthinfo@vmgroup.com. You can ask for Tamara Wall Douglas, or I can give you my personal cell. It's 431-4102. So if you're in any need, you have any questions at all, you can send us an email, you can give me a call, or you can call through our switchboard. But just to continue, because it's getting late, our final speaker for the evening, and this is of great interest to me as a sales leader and leading a team that is not in office. So our final speaker for the afternoon is Coach Kathia Beckford. And Kathia will be speaking to us on virtual leadership. I think this is something that everybody is going to be so interested in because it's going to be part of the new norm. Just a little bio on Ms. Beckford. She believes wholeheartedly in people. She believes that people desire to live joyful, meaningful, balanced lives. She's driven to help individuals achieve exactly that. And as an action business coach, she seeks to empower people in their spirit and freedom through business development. Ms. Beckford, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Tamara, and good afternoon, everyone. It is certainly my pleasure to be here to share with you today on this topic of virtual leadership. So many of us have been thrust in a position now where we have to be leading teams virtually for the first time under these circumstances. And working with virtual teams, it does have a number of benefits, but there are challenges. So my goal today is really to share with you some tips to help you overcome those challenges and not have them get you in a difficult place. So first, those challenges. Found that teams that work virtually are at a higher risk of misalignment. And misalignment really just means that individuals on the team are not all working towards the same goal at a given point in time. It's also been found that teams that work virtually are also at a higher risk of not collaborating sufficiently. And we know that collaboration is essential for innovation. With these two challenges, we also end up with mistrust very often and disengagement of team members. Of course, none of this is really good for an organization, and it can certainly reduce the productivity of a team and the entire organization. So let's get to the tips. The first tip is to have teams of a correct size. It has been found, research has been done, and it has been found that the most effective virtual teams are pretty small. That means they have fewer than 10 people. And the reason that you want this is that it reduces social loafing and allows for inclusive communication. So imagine that you are at a restaurant with 20 people around a massive table. You can imagine that a few of those people are not going to be really engaged in the conversation. Those would be the social loafers. And then you can imagine that you'd have one or two people who are really engaged, really active in the conversation, but not everyone around the table can really hear everything that's being said. So that is what can happen when you have too big a group size at a restaurant, and certainly virtually it makes things even more challenging. Tip number 2 is to be visible. And this is critical both for you as a leader, as well as for every single team member, every single person on your team. There's a very interesting experiment that was done in the 1960s. It's called the Milgram study. You may have heard of it. And there are a number of different variations of it. But the one that's really relevant to this conversation is the one in which it was found that individuals who were unable to see the person that they were harming were more likely to harm that person more intensely. Whereas when they were able to actually see the individual, they were not harming them as much. And in the experiment, the harm was in the form of an electric shock. Now, of course, that's something that we wouldn't do now, that kind of an experiment, because of the ethical issues, but it really did give us some very useful information. And what this shows is that visibility really does engender empathy. And it has been found that empathy is a very big contributor to building and maintaining trust within a team. So with that in mind, you as a team leader, you want to really encourage rich interactions. And rich interactions come in the form of, well, the richest we can have now would be one-to-one video calls. So that's you as a leader with someone else, just the two of you having a video chat. And you want also your team members to do similarly, have one-to-one video chats from time to time. Also, when you're having team meetings, it's beneficial to have the videos on. Of course, it's not always practical, and it's not every single meeting that you need this for, but the idea is that you want people to see each other as human beings and to continue to have that human connection. Without that, individuals can end up being thought of as just another name or a number, and that definitely impacts the empathy and the trust. And of course, you want to have virtual socials. So Red Stripe has obviously been doing very well with this. It can take many forms. It can be in the form of bingo night. I had a bingo evening with my friends the other day, which was a lot of fun. It can be sing-alongs, but basically anything that allows people to see each other, the human element, and really connect. Tip number 3 is to ensure crystal clear communications. Now, this is something that is relevant at any time, whether you're working virtually or not. But when you're working virtually, distance really changes things, and you really don't want to take anything for granted. I remember when I was actually working at Victoria Mutual, I was in the strategy unit, but for a period, I was sitting in the graphics office. And it was amazing that just by being there, I was able to have a really good sense of what that unit was doing. I had a sense of what the deadlines were, what they were working on. And from that, I could even also get a sense of the mood of the individuals on that team. And once I left that physical location, once again, I had no clue what the graphics unit was doing. So similarly, if you think of that, it means that when you're not in the same space, you need to be much more intentional about how you communicate with each other. And it is very useful to be specific in your requests. So for instance, you wouldn't want to say, like, circle back to me. Rather, you want to be very clear what you're circling back to me on, and exactly when, and who is going to be doing the specific activity. So generally, you want to identify who is doing what and by when. And when your conversations take place via telephone or, well, telephone really, you want to follow it up with an email, a concise email with the clear points that were agreed, so that this actually reduces any misunderstandings that may occur. Is to break goals into bite-sized pieces. Now, goals are always critical for any organization. You start off with the purpose, the high level, why are we doing what we're doing? What is it that we're really bringing to humanity? And then you break that down into goals for the organization, goals for the team, and goals for the individual. But what's different here is that because you're working virtually and you are not able to really get a sense of everything that is happening at any given point in time just by chance, you want to break those goals down probably more than you would otherwise. And what happens is that when people are working virtually, they can get caught up in like their own little bubble if the targets or the goals are too large. They may be really engaged, but going down the wrong path. So when you break goals down into really bite-sized pieces, it really allows for course correction early, and that means less wasted time on a team potentially. And the final tip here for today is to establish healthy routines. So work and life can really blend together when you work from home. I know that when I first started working from home, which was about a year ago, I was finding that when it would come to lunchtime, occasionally I'd realize, oh my goodness, I have nothing here to eat, because I was so accustomed to being at work and then just going to the cafeteria to get something to eat. And then sometimes I'd end up having to cook right in the middle of the day, all that sort of thing, and then work pretty late just to accomplish what I had planned to do. So it's very useful to put structures in place to avoid all of this blending. It helps with balance for sure, and it also helps to avoid burnout of your team members. So you really do want to have, for every single team member, you want them to get to a place where they understand or they know, okay, these are the hours that work for me for working, and then the rest of the time is for my other things. So preparing meals, exercising, time with the family, all those other things. And when you have that structure in place and that rhythm, then you can be more productive in the time that you're supposed to be working, and then have the balance that you really do need to refresh yourself. So that's the summary. There are so many other tips. There's a lot of literature on virtual leadership, but given the short time frame, these are the 5 that I believed you could really kind of start using immediately to make your virtual teams that much more effective. So in summary, have teams of the correct size, so that's relatively small, fewer than 10 people, be visible, and that's not just for you, but also for every single one of your team members. Ensure crystal clear communications, break goals into bite-sized pieces, and establish healthy rhythms. With all of this, you're in a much better place to be a productive team. So before I go, just want to share with you that understand that pretty much every business, every organization is facing a challenging time right now. And so Action Coach, along with partnering with Victoria Mutual, we're offering complimentary sessions to business owners and CEOs. And in these complimentary sessions, there's an opportunity for you to get, a second opinion, a new point of view, as well as to help to start create action plans to get through this period and really blossom afterwards. And this is not just about leadership. This is really about anything that would affect your business, whether it means sales, marketing, team issues, cash flow, and so on. So if you're interested, please give us a call. You should reach Andrea McFarlane, and the number is 876-532-2355. That's 876-532-2355. So with that, all the very best. I hope that you enjoy your journey as a leader virtually, and please keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Kathy. I mean, I said I was looking forward to that presentation 100%, because as I said, as a sales leader and your sales team isn't here, it's very hard to keep in touch with them. I think you have indicated some very key strategies here. I really like that one about healthy routines, because what I find is, if I choose to work from home, because I can do both, most times I come to the office because I find when I stay home, my days are almost 12 hours. There are some really long hours. You sit in one position, you don't eat, you don't have lunch, you just do so much. So I can just imagine what the persons who are working from home know, what they're going through. But we have a few questions that have been coming in, so I just want to, in the interest of time, and the first question is for Dr. King. So Dr. King, can you hear me? All
Yep.
right. So it's a very long question. So I will, and it has more than, so I will take it in bites. So it says, Dr. King, do you have any insight of the recovery of employment? That's question 1.
Well, first of all, do I have any insight? No. I only report on the numbers I see and the estimates I can do. So there's no crystal ball gazing, but employment is going to depend on the recovery of the rest of the economy. I mean, it is only when production starts to go up that people are going to be willing to take on back the workers that are laid off. And it's going to happen with a lag in all likelihood, because when one of the reasons why most governments, including the Jamaican government, tried to have some of their state support go to businesses is because it is very easy to close down a business, but the time it takes to put a business back up, to get a location, to get back the equipment, to contract the workers, that is going to have a lag. Whereas if you already have a business, no matter how barely it is surviving, no matter how much debts are accumulating, then it's much easier to turn the switch back on and just have the workers come back in to a business that already exists. So in summary, it's going to obviously depend on when the economy starts to come back. And as I said, we can't know that until we know what is the path of the virus itself. But it also is going to depend upon how long the economy takes to come back in another way, which is that the longer the economy takes to come back, is the more businesses are going to have to close, and therefore the greater lag before employees can get back their work.
All right, the second, it's actually a four-part question. So the second part of it is, with the approximate 30% displacement of workers, do we need to retrain workers for the new sector that will be emerging?
Well, one of the problems that we have in Jamaica in terms of economic productivity is that very little of our workforce is trained in the first place. That something like 3/4 of the labor force don't really have any kind of training or skills to speak of. And that actually creates a problem, because one of the benefits of education is that it creates, never mind what you're educated in, it creates a platform on top of which new learning and retraining can take place. So any extent to which there is going to have to be people moving into new sectors, that is going to be a difficult shift for the economy to make. So again, that just underscores how important it is for us to hope that the economic contraction is short.
I think, well, they got specific with the sector of workers. They were asking about agricultural workers. How trainable do you think they are? So
well, that answer to that would come under what I said before.
Right, correct.
Is that less training and skills you have to begin with, is the harder it is.
Too, right. Yeah, I agree with you. Our second question here is from Charles O'Connor Consulting Network Limited, and we are going to throw this question to Cathal.
Yes.
All right, so Cathal, it says we are an accounting and auditing firm. While we offer several accounting services, how can we better serve our customers, one, and what opportunities exist for us?
So that is a massive question, but in terms of how you can better serve your customers, just generally speaking, you want to understand what your customers' needs are. And that is something that you do over the course of time, really getting feedback directly from them, and then using that to implement strategies that really do address those. Now, not all innovations are going to be based on what your customers are saying. There are certain things that your customers probably don't even realize they could use. Like, there are things that Amazon introduced way before we thought there were things that we would actually be using, things like Amazon Prime and Amazon push buttons, but people have really taken on to them. So you do want to also have ways to test on a small scale things that you want to try out, and after testing and measuring, you can see what actually works. But just generally, you want to be getting feedback and you want to be testing things, and the testing really means you have to be capturing the data to know what really works for your business and what does not work. I hope that answers it, because that's a very big question.
Thank you, Catheo. Our third question here, I'm going to throw it to Ms. Ashton Smith, because it's about the manufacturing and distribution sector. So, is she on?
I am on. I am here.
Okay, thank you so much. So the question asks, will the manufacturing and distribution sector be the most thriving in this period?
I actually would want to throw that to actually Dr. King.
Okay.
He looked quite surprised. But I can only speak from the perspective of Red Stripe. I would not even use the word thriving at this point. We have sustained our business because, as I said, you know, the impact to us has also been great because, bear in mind, we service the hospitality, we service the bars, the restaurants, etc. And as a consequence of them being closed, then we have, of course, we are seeing the impact. So our position at this point is just to remain ahead of the curve in terms of production, which is why we continue to manufacture and produce. Just so one, we're keeping our employees employed. Two, we can come back very quickly once things start to come back to quote unquote normal. And of course, to service our export markets. But generally speaking, I'd want to throw that back to Dr. King.
Dr. King, you're in the hot seat again.
Well, just to speak more generally, services would tend to lend themselves more to delivery over distance, some services, than manufacturing. So if there are sectors that are going to manage the crisis better or even thrive, I wouldn't think it would be manufacturing. So I certainly wouldn't put Red Stripe in that category. But some businesses are thriving. Businesses that are already set up to deal with remoteness, like the platform that we're using for this seminar. You know, those businesses are thriving. The gig economy in general gets a boost from this, as was mentioned earlier. So the effect on different sectors is going to vary widely.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Dr. King. So our next question, Mr. Hutchinson, are you online? This question is for you.
Yeah, man. Yes, I am.
All right. What information besides the financial statement of an organization can be used when analyzing a company's financial health?
Okay, great. So we normally carry out our due diligence and it relates to really everything about the business. Financial statements provides a lot of information, but we'll also look at the industry or the sector that you're operating in, chiefly the environment, the economic environment that you're operating in, how competitive you are in that particular sector. We look at that information on the macro level. And then the financial statements, as mentioned before, provides key information for your specific company and the operations. How do you operate? How are you different from your competitors? What competitive advantage do you have? Right? These are just some of the things that we look at. But again, to have a more fulsome discussion, we'll have to make some arrangements so we can meet and have a better discussion.
All right, thank you so much, Kalando. The next question by Dr. King, they're throwing the questions at you. So it says, Dr. King, do you think the possibility of a recession may hit Jamaica?
We're in it and we're deep in it.
We're in it. Okay, so have another question here. It says, good day. Do you believe that the stock market will recover? And would you recommend persons to still invest in the stock market? So Dr. King, Kalando, either of you can jump in on that one.
Well, what we can do to address that is to take a long historical view. This is the defining event of our generation. When your children, if they are old enough to be conscious of this, like your teenage children and your 20-year-olds, when they they are going to be talking about this for the rest of their lives. So this is a big event, both personally, emotionally, economically. Having said that, you know, there were the 9/11 attacks, there was the Great Recession, there was the Spanish flu, there was the Great Depression, there was World War II, and economies always come back. So if you are taking the long view, that remains true. The Jamaican economy, if we wait long enough, is going to not only fully recover, it's going to thrive. If you have the liquidity to take a bet on the long view, it's a pretty good bet.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. King. Just 1 second, we have a few more questions coming in, but I just wanted to ask Kathy a question, because as I said, the virtual leadership it has been very, right now, what you find is that a lot of persons, so we're doing press from a VMwealth standpoint, we're trying to stay in contact with our clients, right? So we're using technology to do these presentations to our client base. And what I find is that everybody's afraid to show their faces. So everybody wants that an anonymous, we'll talk, but I don't want to show my face. You know, how can we break the both our clients and the sales team out of that, where we know, I mean, we're such a social country, and this is bringing us to a point where we don't want to have the face-to-face connection via this means.
So in terms of how I can speak from the perspective of a team leader, so working with your team, you definitely don't want to mandate it, but rather almost make it fun. I mean, you can do things like show yourself in not your best light and just say it's okay. It's more about having the human connection than being perfect. So that is one way to probably break some of the barriers, because some of them may really be around thinking, okay, I'm not looking my best, or, you know, things are around me, I don't have a perfect home office, but that's okay. That's actually really good to help get the team more connected to each other. And also for your team members, have those conversations. So just one-on-one, say, oh, you know, I noticed that you don't want to put on your video. Why is that? Just have a conversation, really, you know, no blame or anything, but just get a sense from people, and really just encourage them in a gentle way. For your customers, it would be, I think, a little bit more of a challenge, but it is kind of, in a sense, more important for them to see you than for you to see them. So I think if you focus on the team, you would get a lot of wins just from that.
Yeah, thank you. No, I agree with you. There is a question for, well, they've asked for both weigh in on from Dr. King and from Kalando. It says, it's apparent that we will be having rotations out of the old sectors and into the new ones. Which sectors will be the winners and losers in a decade or so?
I don't know if I can, as Dr. King indicated earlier, there's no crystal ball, but except that what these times are telling us is that moving to digital and the platforms that are out there are areas that we see that will, you know, take a front stage going forward. It has been there for some time, but change takes some time. But in these times and the pandemic, it has kind of fast tracked that change in my mind. So, for example, the remote work, you know, was always on the card. A number of companies were doing it, thinking about it, right? But what this time has done is to fast track that. But as to what the specific industries will be, I mean, you know, that's the best I can tell you at this point. Dr. Kim, do you have any other insight on that?
Well, no, just to corroborate that any business or service that facilitates distance delivery and remote connections has a huge opportunity here, because that is one of the legacies of this. You know, there's a well-established view that disruptions lead to efficiencies, because people get accustomed. I see Kathy is smiling right away, and I'm pleased about that. That people get accustomed. People don't work or do tasks in the most efficient way. They do it in the way they did it yesterday. And there was one study that was done of the London Underground after the last terrorist attack they had on the Underground, and where stations were closed in central London. And so they looked at the patterns of how people commuted to get around the stations that were closed. And then they matched those patterns to what people did after full service was restored. And they discovered that a good 78% of commuters kept their alternative routes, having discovered them to be actually more efficient. And many of us are experiencing that now, that the disruption forces you to rethink all things in new ways, and you discover new skills, you learn new abilities, and you learn better ways of doing things. That's going to persist. So we are going to come out of this ultimately with more efficient ways of doing things because of the forced rethinking. So opportunities are going to be found in that too.
All right, Dr. King, there was actually a follow-up question to the question asking if you believe that Jamaica is in a recession. So they're asking what current factors do you think indicate that we're in a deep recession? So we're saying we're in a deep recession. What factors are we?
The fact that when you speak to business owners and you ask them how much is their revenue down and how much is their production down from 3 months ago, you get answers anywhere from 5% to 80%. If everybody said only 5%, we'd be in a deep recession.
Okay, thank you so much. Katheo, there was actually somebody was requesting if you could put on the, or I could read it for them, the contact number for the complimentary 1-hour session.
Sure.
Or I can, or you can put it on the screen, but I can read it in the meantime.
Okay.
So it's Andreen McFarlane, 876-532-2355. So I will repeat, that's Andreen McFarlane, 876-532-2355. Thank you so much, Kathio. All right, so we have another question here. It says, what sort of investment can be assessed by an entity wishing to set up in the inbound tourism sector post-COVID? Kalondo, do you want to take that one?
Sorry, read it again for me. What kind of?
What sort of investment can be assessed by an entity wishing to set up in the inbound tourism sector post-COVID?
Right. I'm not so sure I understand the question at all.
All right, so we can reach out to the person who posed that question because we want to be able to answer. Right, so we will reach out to the person who posed this question to get some clarity and definitely respond to that. Another question that's here, it says, what are the non-traditional courses that would be recommended to persons investing at this time to thrive during the economic? So Kalanda, I'll throw that one back out to you because they're actually asking about investment. What investment opportunities would we recommend?
Right. Right. So as we said, during this time, it's challenging, markets are contracting, right? But again, we have to look at the particular person situation and what type of investors they are, what their objectives are. You know, are they looking for a quick buck somewhere, or is it that they're looking more for long-term returns? We'd have to assess all of that to see what the advice should be. But having said that, as we said, the recovery may be lengthy. We don't know. We are hoping to find that out maybe over the next 6 months. But if it is that you have a long-term view, then stocks would be for you. And if it is, for example, that you want to earn in the fixed income type, then we have a lot of opportunities on the fixed income type securities, bonds, etc. But again, we'd have to have a more detailed conversation.
All right, thank you so much. So we are actually having a few more questions coming in, but we're going to wrap up this session for this afternoon. We want to thank our 4 presenters this afternoon. Katheo, I loved your presentation. Ms. Ashton Smith, I loved it's so in depth. The 3 C's. I will we're going to post this on our website, and it will be on our Facebook page and our Instagram page, so everybody will be able to share in this session because it was so insightful. Kalanda, as usual, you are a genius at the markets. And Dr. King, as I said to you, and I will say it again, my daughter, you made her love economics. So, and she actually did her master's in economics. That's how, so I really want to thank each of you. Really want to thank each of you from the VM family and from our clients and from everybody who has joined us. We're going through unprecedented times. I think we've said that word so many times. It's become the new favorite word of everybody. I don't think a sentence goes by and that word isn't used. But from the VM family, what I would say to you as well is keep asking your questions. The live will be, the chat will stay open and we will respond to you as best as possible. If you want to reach out to us, you can call us 960-5000 or send out your questions to wealthinfo@vmgroup.com, or you can reach out to me, Tamara Wall Douglas, Manager Sales at VM Wealth Management. I had given my cell number before. I'll give it again. It's 876-431-4102. We look forward to hearing from you. We're going to be doing several of these, so this is not the last opportunity for us to share with you and for you to share with us. We thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that your business survives this, and because Jamaica needs it. So thank you very much.